So we're going to go ahead and get started here. So it is so great to see you all. I certainly missed last month. It was consecration week that our session happened to fall on. And so that is a very busy week for us, but a set aside week where it's just sanctify yourself and set yourself aside for the work of God and praying and fasting and all those wonderful things. So, but I am so glad to be back with you all. I have missed you. And so this lesson isn't going to be super duper long, but I did want to touch on some really important things since we're working through the New Testament now. There are some new faces, some new people. So I do want to tell you that you can go to my website, francinewestgate.com, and you can access the other 7 lessons, the replay videos, and the workbook. So you can work through on your own time when you have a chance if you want to. It is stocked full of information and fun facts and Jewish context and content. And Alana, I know you'll love that. You're Jewish. And so I love those discussions of Passover and Passover Seder and all those things. So, but yeah, so if you missed them, please feel free, go back to the website and you can pull it up there and work your way through whichever one lesson you missed. If you haven't seen any of them, then please, by all means, work through them all. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And so the first slide, if you have your workbook printed off, is the gifts of the Spirit. So the gifts of the Spirit, or what we refer to as the manifestations of the Spirit. It's what we should see manifested in the church today. So this is the manifestations of the Spirit, or the gifts of the Spirit, as we all usually refer to it. That solely has to do with the church body, the church community. The gifts of the Spirit are for the body altogether, the collective, the church, for the ministry, and for the help in ministry for the church itself. So one of the gifts is the word of wisdom. And so the word of wisdom, now you might have the gift of the word of wisdom, and you might also have another gift. You might also have the gift of faith, which isn't the everyday level, the amount that without faith, it's impossible to please God. So maybe you have that amount of faith, but somebody else has the supernatural amount of faith, the kind of faith that believes, whoa, wait a minute, let's look again. Let's go check again, because I know that God is able, and I am believing him for this healing, for this miracle, for this thing in your life or somebody else's life. And that gift of faith, where you have that supernatural kind of faith, empowerment, that you speak over somebody and you just know that God's going to do it. So the gifts of healing, that type of gift. Now, you might not even know if you have one or what you operate in. Particularly, I'm not a person who prophesies, and I speak in tongues in my own personal prayer closet time, but I'm not that person that prophesies and speaks out in tongues, and there has to be an interpretation of tongues. But this is all for the working of the body. This is for the church itself. And this is so that people, that we can, like, when we look at the operation of the church, these are necessary. We need these kinds of manifestations. It's visible manifestation that, hey, God is present. God is with us. God is up to something. God is doing something. And so there's the 9 gifts that are listed here. And then we have, now, I think, and I don't know, but I would say word of knowledge, word of wisdom, that I might operate in. Discerning of spirits, can be, but some of these gifts I would love to have the gift of healing, be able to lay my hands on somebody and just know that person's going to get up out of the wheelchair. Just know that person's blind eyes are going to be healed. Now, I'll pray for you. I'll pray that over you. But I wish I had that kind of gift where I just walk through a crowd and be like, oh, I see a need. I'm going to lay my hands on them and bam, they're, but I don't have that. So, but I do believe that God can work and do miracles for people like that. Now, the fruit of the Spirit. So the gifts of the Spirit, that's for the church. But the fruit of the Spirit is for us on an individual level. It's the spiritual grace for me, for you, for the person beside you on an individual basis. And so I love how Jesus says, you'll know them by their fruits. If they're my disciple, you're going to know them by the fruit: love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. You're going to know them by their fruit. So I'm going to read the Message version for the fruit of the Spirit scriptures, Galatians 5:22-23. I love how this reads. So I put this in the workbook for you all, the Message version. But what happens when we live God's way? He brings gifts into our lives, much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. Things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity. We develop a willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, and a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. I mean, that's the Message version. Now, the King says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such, there is no law. Look, you can't argue with these things. There's no law against this stuff. There's no law against loving and peace and goodness and mercy. There's no law against it. And so it's like we should be exuberating the fruit of the Spirit. It should be permeating from us. People should be able to see us coming and think, "Whoo, that person, oh, they're a breath of fresh air." You don't want people thinking, "Oh, that person, quick, hide," when they see you coming. You want them to be like, oh, that person is so compassionate. They have so much empathy. They have just this supernatural amount of peace about them. It doesn't make sense. Like they're standing on their head. It feels like everything in their life has been shifted around, yet they seem to have peace that passes all understanding. I get them, but man, I'd like to be around them. We should be the fruit of the Spirit should just be emanating from us. It should be dripping from us. Our words should drip with the fruit of the Spirit. Our words should make people hungry, thirsty, want more, desire to be around you because there's so much peace. And I remember when my boys were young and Alana used to come over to the townhouse when we lived in the townhouse on Oak Forest Road, and people would come to our house. Now we had young children and I babysat, I did a home daycare, and people would come to our house and say, your house is so peaceful. Like, how is this possible? Your house is just so peaceful. That's God. That's the fruit of the Spirit that they're seeing, sensing, tasting, feeling. And so the fruit of the Spirit, I want people to want to be around me. I don't want people to run and hide from me when they see me coming at Walmart. I'll say it in the New England accent. I don't want people to hide from me when they see me at Walmart. I mean, I want people to be like, oh, I just want to say hi to her. I just want to speak to her. I don't want them to say, ooh, I hope she's in a good mood tonight. Look, an angry Christian is the devil's billboard. I hope you caught that. An angry Christian, a miserable Christian. You are the devil's billboard. The devil don't have to do any work. All you have to do is be miserable. It's like your fruit is spoiling. It's, and so these are things that as we move through the New Testament and the New Testament teaching, these are important. These are vital. The operations within the church and then the operations in the individual. What is the Spirit doing in me? I want you to see Christ in me, the hope of glory. I want you to see the kind of hope that gives you hope in me. I want you to see the kind of faith in me that God can move mountains so that hey, God moved Francine's mountain. God fixed that thing. God did that thing she's been praying for fervently. So if he did it for her, then he can do it for me. And so what happens is when we are saved, when we are born again, we take on the nature of Christ. We put on Christ. It's like we clothe ourselves in him and we take on his nature, his characteristics. And so when we're not demonstrating or portraying Christ-like characteristics or nature, then it leaves people baffled. It leaves people like scratching their head, like, and they call themselves a Christian? Now, look, I know none of us are perfect. I know we all have moments where, we have bad days, we have bad moments. But really, as a Christian, our job is to change people's state. So if you see somebody in a foul state, in a sad state, in a discontent state, in an angry state, in a moody state, our job isn't to join their state. Our job is not to go head to head with them. Oh, you're going to have an attitude with me? Well, I'm going to give you an attitude back. Our job is to change their state, to change them, transition them from miserable or moody or angry to, whoa, kind, and maybe see a smile on their face. That's what our job is to do. And oftentimes what happens is there's two types of communication, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. So all communication can be broken down into two categories. So the one category is a loving response. And the second category is a cry for help. And so what happens is oftentimes a cry for help is met with a cry for help. So there's conflict there because a cry for help is met with a cry for help. But when a cry for help is met with a loving response, it diffuses the situation. It changes the state that the person is in. And so that's what, as a Christian, we need the awareness piece that, yeah, we don't know what happened in that person's life. We go to Cracker Barrel and the server might have a terrible attitude, but maybe they lost their loved one that week. Maybe they had a court hearing. Maybe they're struggling to pay their bills. Maybe their vehicle was repossessed. We don't know what has caused them to have that state. But our job is to love them and to be kind to them and to help change the state from this to this through a loving response and not meeting their attitude with an attitude or their cry for help with a cry for help. And so here's the fruit of the Spirit. And then we have the works of the flesh. And now I also use the Message version. So I'm going to read Galatians 5:19 through 21. So the fruit of the Spirit comes on the heels of the works of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5. It is obvious what kind of life develops out of trying to get your own way all the time. Whoa, wait a minute. I mean, time out, right? This is the Message version. I just love this. It is obvious what kind of life develops out of trying to get your own way all the time. Repetitive, loveless, cheap sex, a stinking accumulation of mental and emotional garbage. Whoa. Frenzied and joyless grabs for happiness, trinket gods, magic show religion, paranoid loneliness, cutthroat competition, all-consuming yet never satisfied wants, a brutal temper, and impotence to love or be loved, divided homes and divided lives, small-minded and lopsided pursuits, the vicious habit of depersonalizing everyone into a rival. We make people our rivals. That's really good. Uncontrolled and uncontrollable addictions, ugly parodies of community. I could go on. So this is what Paul says. Of course, that's the Message version. But man alive. So we see here that the works of the flesh. So that was the Message version. But in the King James version, it refers to all of those as adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry when we're worshiping other idols, or other trinket gods is what they refer to it as in the Message. Witchcraft. Now, witchcraft, that's an interesting one, because rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. So, you know, there's like so many layers to just that one word. And there's hatred, when you hate somebody. You hate what they did to you. You hate that they robbed you. You hate that they hurt your loved one. You hate that they cheated on you. You hate that they left you. You hate, right? It's this hatred, the kind of hatred that, and maybe you've experienced this in your own life, but it's the kind of hatred that you're consumed with. The thoughts about that person are always running through your head. You're consumed with them. They hurt you. And now you have this hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, fighting with each other, fighting with our brothers and sisters, fighting with the person on the street, fighting with our neighbor, seditions, heresies, envyings. Let's talk about that. Envyings. When you want what you don't have, you want what somebody else has. You envy them. You want what they have. You don't have it, and you got to have it. And so you tend to dislike that person. Through that process of envying somebody, you tend to dislike them because they have something that you don't have. And so envy has caused you to dislike them, to not be kind to them. How many times have we judged somebody because maybe they have a better car than we have, or a better job? Maybe they got that job we wanted. And so, you know, we're envious, and then we talk bad about them, and we have a lot to say behind their back. But, you know, drunkenness, revelings, and such like. Look, gossip is in there, you know. It's the fruit of the Spirit isn't on display when we're talking about our coworker, or our sister at church, or brother at church, or a family member. That's not demonstrating the fruit of the Spirit when we're talking and gossiping, and we got to get on the phone and tell so-and-so what we just heard somebody else say, and we're passing it along and playing a phone game. So here's the fruit of the Spirit, the works of the flesh, and the gifts of the Spirit. And so I wanted to read Romans chapter 2, and I'm going to read the King James Version, verse 9. I'm going to start with verse 8. No, I'm going to go ahead and start with verse 5. But after thy hardness and impenitent heart, treasurest up unto thyself wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God, who will render to every man according to his deeds. So you're going to get according to your deeds. That's how it's going to be dished out. That's how it's going to be given out. To them who by patient continuance in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, eternal life. But unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first and also of the Gentile. I love how it refers to those that do good deeds. It's at the end of it all, it's eternal life. But those who do evil deeds, it's tribulation and anguish. That's interesting because it's not talking per se. Now, maybe one of the layers, every scripture has 70 faces. So maybe it's referring to, hell when, judgment day, all of those things. But I think it's more about the state. We just talked about moody, angry. I think it has everything to do with your state. If you're doing evil deeds, then you're going to be repaying yourself evil. That's what you're going to reap. And so in return, if you're doing evil deeds, then yeah, tribulation and anguish is what you're going to get at the end of the day, because that is what you're paying yourself. That's what you're reaping unto yourself. That's your harvest. And so when you're doing evil deeds, when you're doing wrong things, when you're talking about people, and when you're doing all of these works of the flesh, you can't expect to feel love, joy, and peace on a consistent basis. You can expect to feel chaos. And so I think I just love how this verse, it's talking about here and now. So oftentimes we put off, when we get to heaven, that's how we talk about everything. Like, when we get over yonder, this is going to happen in heaven. There's going to be no more of this and no more of that, and no more tears and no more sadness and no more. Right. I get it. But what about here and now? We talk about heaven like it's some future place, distance, like not until I die. But the kingdom of heaven is at hand, Jesus said. And so I think it begins on this side of glory, not just on that side of glory when we get over there, but on this side of glory, we should be having peace and joy and love here and now. And so I love John chapter 10 and verse 10, where it says, the thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. The thief cometh not, but for to kill, steal, destroy. That's what the thief comes to do. Kill, steal, destroy. It's funny because there's this one verse in Proverbs that says that a man that commits adultery destroys his life, brings destruction on himself. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. Destruction. And not only does that apply to adultery, but it applies to all of these works of the flesh. You are bringing destruction on yourself when this is what you choose to do with yourself and with your tongue, that you decide, hey, I'm not one, I don't really have much to say about people unless it's good. I don't really find any pleasure in talking about people. It doesn't interest me. I'd much rather talk about all the things you can be oh, oh, this, you could be this, you could do that. I don't want to talk about all the things you're not. That's boring. And at the end of the day, I think people do that because it makes themselves feel better. When they can cut somebody else down to size, it makes them feel bigger and makes them feel better. But we as Christians, when we've been born again, we should take on the nature of Christ. We should be demonstrating the fruit of the Spirit on a consistent basis. And really, all of the fruit, that's spiritual grace for us. Patience, oh, it takes spiritual grace sometimes to be patient, And I love how somebody said that there's no such thing as patience, only the skilled ability to hide impatience. Well, it takes grace to hide impatience. And so sometimes, yeah, that might be true. But I love how it says, I am come. Jesus said, I am come that ye might have life and that ye might have it more abundantly. Abundant life here and now, not just over yonder, not just when we get to heaven, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that would be. That's great. But I want a day of rejoicing here and now. And so abundant life starts on this side. But you can't have abundant life if you're walking after the flesh. You can't have abundant life. Abundant life comes with the fruit of the Spirit. And so those are the operations, the church, the individual, and then we have the old man, the new man. And now I think, we put on Christ. And I think sometimes we can take off Christ when we choose to let the old man, because what does Paul say? To die daily. Was it Paul? I think Paul that said it, to die daily, regardless, to take up your cross and to die daily, to die to the old man daily, to put the old man on the cross. Why? So that envyings doesn't creep back in, so that maybe the adulterous nature that you had doesn't creep back in, so that hatred doesn't creep back in. You have to put that old man on the cross daily so that the fruit of the Spirit can be seen, can be made visible in your life through your words, through your actions. And so I want abundant life here. That's what I want. Yes, I want it over there, but I really want love and joy and peace here and now. I don't want chaos, and this past season of my life, the past few months has been a difficult season. We all have good seasons and bad seasons. And so my husband always says, it's natural, seasons come and seasons go. But one of the things about having a season is there's always that rupture and repair. So something might feel like it's been ruptured. Maybe you have some distance between you and God, but then there's that repair moment where it's like, you know what? Or in a relationship with your spouse or with your children, there's a rupture moment, or with a friend, a close friend, or a coworker. There's a rupture and repair. And so we don't always get along 100% with somebody. They might have really, really have hurt our feelings, and we're not going to be a doormat for them anymore to keep doing and treating us the way that they've been doing and treating us. And you know what? God doesn't expect us to be a doormat. He says, turn the other cheek. And then, at some point you have to be like, I love you, but I'm going to love you from afar, because I can't allow myself to be used like that. And oftentimes people that do demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit, that it's easy for them to, be taken advantage of. And so, yeah, sometimes we do need the discerning of spirits and things like that, that we don't wish to be taken advantage of. We don't want to be used. We don't want to be walked all over. And the truth is, we teach people how to treat us. And so us allowing us never being able to say no. Being a Christian doesn't mean you can't tell people no. No, you know what? Coming over, no, it's really not a good time for me. I'm busy. I have this to do. I have that to do. It's, no, I don't have $100 for you. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person. Saying no doesn't make you a bad Christian. And so one of the things I have learned in my life is that I am, sorry, I hear an echo, that I'm a people pleaser. I have up until the past few years, I've had a really, really difficult time telling people no. Like, for real, no, I'm not going to babysit your kids. No, I'm not going to pay to go out to eat. No, I'm not going to buy you that pair of shoes. No, 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 no. I've always been the yes. Oh, of course, because I wanted people to like me. Oh, yeah, no big deal. Yeah, got it. But now I'm like, no, I don't want to babysit your kids. I raised mine. Find somebody else. I'm good. I'm 51. I don't need to babysit no more. I got my grandbaby. So, I got my hands full. And so you go ahead, and I love you. And maybe down the road, I'll babysit one time here and there. But, and there used to be a time where like all the ladies would get together at church, and they would call me. I'd have 6 ladies calling me. Hey, can you watch my kids? Me and a couple of ladies are going to the mall. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll watch them. And then the next one will call. Hey, can you watch my kids? I'm going to the mall. I'm like, oh yeah. And then 6 ladies later, I've got like 20 kids, and I didn't get the invite to the mall ever because I'm always the babysitter. And so it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I am not going to take out a loan for you for $5,000. And they might get mad at you, but it's okay to say no. That does not make you less of a Christian. Now, you do need to speak the truth in love. You don't want to put them on blast. You don't want to get on your soapbox and be Facebook and social media about them and be like, oh, I can't believe people ask that of me. There's a certain maturity that we as Christians need. And there's a lot of things on social media that don't need to be on social media. People don't need to know every time somebody calls you to babysit and you call them out on social media, or somebody hurt your feelings. People don't need to know everything. And so I'm pretty careful with what I say on social media. And normally I speak to the whole audience. I'll post a post that it's hard to be present when you're hurting. It's very true. It's very true. It's really hard to be present when you're hurting. Emotional pain, physical pain is pain. It's all the same. And so it is hard. It is hard to be present when you're hurting. And so one of my favorite things that I've said, that we oftentimes refer to family drama, oh, my family's full of drama. But family drama, I think we've mislabeled that. Family drama is really family trauma. And so that's really what you're seeing. It's really trauma. It's years and years and generations sometimes of trauma that a family has gone through and never actually healed from. So this was what I wanted to talk about. Just these 3 things: the gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit, and the works of the flesh. That as Christians, that we should be cognizant that we are working to better ourselves through Christ in us. Like, we should be mindful to be kind, to be patient, to be caring, to show empathy. Look, we have no business as Christians fighting if we can't fight without empathy. If you're going to fight with empathy. That's the only way you can fight fair. And that means put the other person's shoes on. See it from their perspective. And it always helps you. It's always like, oh, I didn't even see it that way. I'm sorry. Yeah, I could see why you might have had your feelings hurt, but that is not what I meant. That was not my intention. So it's okay to have disagreements, but make sure you're fighting with empathy. That's the only way to fight fair. And one of the things that my husband and I have always said is never say never. Keep the word never and always. Keep that out of your vocabulary, because those aren't true statements. You never and you always, that's not true. So, in order to fight fair, to fight with empathy, you really have to disregard words that aren't truthful words. So never and always. We tell, couples in couple ministry that all the time, to avoid saying never and always. He never washes the dishes. Okay, he did one time last year. So, kind of cut those out. And so when we were growing up, I'm just going to tell a story. We're going to end probably a little bit early, but when we were growing up, my twin sister and I, we were super duper poor. And, as we say in Maine, we were wicked poor. Yeah. So we were really, really poor. And, most of you probably know my story. We went to the bathroom on 5-gallon buckets and had to pump water from a hand pump outside. And that was our life, And when we were in middle school, we were in, I think it was 8th grade. It was the day before Christmas break. And the lunch ladies, my twin sister and I, we volunteered in the cafeteria to wash the dishes. We volunteered to help the cafeteria ladies. So we would put on hairnets and we would put on aprons every day at lunch, and we would go down to the cafeteria, Charlene and I, and wash dishes and scrape trays and do whatever we had to do. So we volunteered. And the reason why we volunteered was because we never could find a seat during lunch to sit down and eat our lunch. Nobody would let us sit beside them because we smelled too bad, because we were poor, because we had butter cookie shoes with holes in the toes, and we had just nobody wanted us to sit beside them. And so we discovered that if we volunteered to be mini lunch ladies, that we could leave class early before the lunch bell. And we could go sit in the cafeteria, just my twin sister and I, and eat lunch. And so we loved it. And so it was the day before Christmas break. And the lunch ladies were huddled together by the register. And it was just my sister and I. We were sitting at the table eating. And they were huddled together. And I remember saying to my sister, I hope that when we come back from Christmas break, the lunch ladies aren't going to tell us that we can't volunteer anymore. And that was my gut. I was so worried that they were going to say we couldn't do this anymore. And so the huddle broke up, and the lunch lady walked toward Charlene and I, Miss Ruth, walked toward us with a bag in each hand, a really big bag that had JCPenney written on the front of it. It was cream. It had cream and mint stripes on it, had rope handles, each bag. And so she hands us each a bag. And I remember just standing there looking at her like, what do I do with this bag? Because we weren't used to gifts. And she goes, well, go ahead, open it, And so I opened my bag and I pulled out a purple coat. Now this coat came down below my knees. It was long and plush and amazing. And it came below my knees and zipped all the way up to my neck. And under the coat was a purple pair of moon boots. So it matched the coat. And so the moon boots came up and the jacket came all the way down and over the rim of the boots. And literally none of me was showing but my hands and my head. I was covered. And so I remember kicking off my old butter cookies with my toe sticking through a hole in it, and taking off the old dingy coat, and underneath the arm there was the stuffing from the jacket was springing out from a hole under my arm. The patches on my jacket were falling off. It was dirty and old and too small. The wrist came way up. I had it for a couple of years and had outgrown it, but it was the only coat I had. And I remember taking that off and putting on the new boots and the new coat, and I was covered. Look, when we are born again, we are covered in Christ. Like all of us. They shouldn't be able to see the old you. They should be seeing the new you. And so I was covered in Christ. Look, his blood covers us. It covers the old man, the old nature, so that it doesn't creep back in. And yes, we have to die daily. We have to put the old man on the cross daily, lest that nature come back when somebody does us wrong, when somebody doesn't return our lawnmower, or when somebody returns our lawnmower and the blade's broke, or they borrow it full of gas and return it without gas. Yeah, the old man's got going across. So, but that's it. I wanted to show y'all something. So y'all know I have been working on my memoir. Now, I'm not kidding you. The memoir, you know, I keep saying, oh, it's coming. Alana, I think Alana's like, oh my goodness, what memoir? It's been so long, right? So I've been working on it. I have spent over 25,000 hours learning the art, the craft of writing memoir, of the 25,000 hours. That's not a mistake. I didn't misspeak. I have spent a lot of hours learning how to do this, how to write. And I've spent a lot of time getting all the way to the end of the manuscript and starting back over and editing and revising. And I think I have been through 1,000 drafts. And it has taken me more than 21 years to do this. And so I have the proof copy of In the Land of Canaan, Maine, A Little Girl's Giants. So this is my memoir. This is the proof copy. So pretty soon it's going to be available to purchase. And I need you all to pray. So what I want to do with this book, I want to send this book to Whoopi Goldberg, and I want to ask her to write the foreword for it. So that's my plan this week, to send it to her. I'm trusting God, but pray that God moves on her, and we'll just see what God does. So I would love for her to write the foreword for this. I think, you know, first of all, I don't have a huge platform, and I really feel like this is a message that people need to hear. This is a message of freedom and forgiveness. This is a message that if I can overcome, you can overcome. And I never even planned on writing this. I never planned on writing a memoir. I came home in 2003. I worked at Sandusky Elementary School. And I came home, I was the lunch lady of all people. I was the lunch lady. And so I had got off work, and I was laying down in bed, and I was watching the Oprah Winfrey show. Now, this was back when she still had her show in Chicago, and it happened to be her book club show. And so I'm watching the TV, and she holds up a book. Tears are streaming down her face, and she says, "You have to read this book." I don't even know what book it was, but I sat up in the bed on my knees. I pointed my finger at the TV screen, and I said, with tears streaming down my face, like the Holy Ghost jumped up in me, I said, I'm going to be on her show one day. She's going to have my book, and she's going to say, you have to read this book. I got up immediately, went to the kitchen table, sat down with an old electric power envelope and a pen. And I closed my eyes and I said, okay, God, if you want me to write my story, then you have to give me the title. And I had this whole thing with God. I said, I know the title is not the most important thing, but it is for me. And I closed my eyes, and within seconds, I'm not kidding you, seconds, goosebumps stood up on my arms. And In the Land of Canaan, Maine popped in my head, In the Land of Canaan. And instantly I knew the beginning of the book from the end. I knew that it would deal with the psychological and the physical giants that I had to overcome while living in the land of Canaan, Maine, in order to possess my promise, my joy, my peace, in order to have this promise. Yeah. So this book deals with I just tell my story, and I've spent a lot of time learning how to do this. And so hopefully it will be out. I'm hoping November. I'm waiting. We're going to see what Whoopi says. So prayers, prayers, prayers. So, I mean, the most she'll say is no, or not respond, or yes. So, but I'm believing God. I know God has his hand in it. I know that it's been a long time coming, and I have spent intentionally taken my time because I wanted it to be right. I didn't want it to, I wanted it to be a book where I show you, not tell you. I don't want to tell you I was poor. I want to show you I was poor. And so just learning the craft. And so just keep me in your prayers the next few weeks, and I'll be launching the release soon. Barnes & Noble's already plans on having the book signing at the Barnes & Noble's here in Lynchburg. So we're going to have a book signing there, announcements coming. So I'm just believing God. I'm just believing God that he knows what he's doing. He told me to write this book. I've been obedient. I have spent 25,000 hours. I have been obedient, and the results are up to him, and I'm just trusting him. So I just wanted to say, I love you all. Thank you for joining tonight, and I will see you next month.